Do you think UFOs, the paranormal, weird history, cryptozoology, and outsider art are pretty darn cool? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to High Strangeness with your host, Steve Berg.
The video version. Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of High Strangeness. Today, I have on some old buddies who I haven't seen for a long time, Mark McNabb and Rob Freeman. Boys, how you guys doing?
Great,
Steve. Thanks for having us. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Yeah, you too. Well, I met you guys at a shocker, a UFO conference. God, what year was that? Was that like 2019? It was right before the pandemic. I know that.
2019. Yeah, that's right.
It was like not far. Or it was like a few months before the pandemic, I think. Right? Like it was one of the last like things I worked on, I think, before the world went weird. But yeah, I met these two dudes in Laughlin. They were just so nice, and like we got along really well. And I was there shooting a little pilot for a TV show at this huge conference in Laughlin, Nevada. And I think you guys even were in the pilot a little bit. But fellas, what have you been up to since then? It's been a long time. It's been about 6 years.
Gosh, where do we start, Mark?
Where do we start? I would say because we've never appeared, and thank you, we've never appeared on your show, Steve. I think it probably would be a good idea to give just a little bit of intro to Rob, because you know, everything started with this man when he was 12 years old. So
I love
him
that.
give a little bit of that would probably be good context.
I think so too. Yeah, we love context around here. But really quick, before we get into the 12-year-old thing, like, have you guys? Well, and that might answer the question, but I guess I'll start with you, Mark, before, because it sounds like Rob might have a little bit of a interesting backstory. Have you been into like UFOs and the paranormal and stuff like for a while, or did you get into it a little bit late?
It was really with Rob. I mean, I always was attracted to that. I mean, I was Close Encounters of the Third Kind baby.
Yeah.
I was an E.T. the Extraterrestrial baby. You know, those are the shows and films that I grew up on. So when I met Rob in 2010, so it's 15 years for us, we were all on a movie set because I'm a movie producer.
Right.
And we were producing a movie together. And Rob just put the, ethereal question out there. You know, anybody ever seen a UFO? You know, just over lunch, right?
Yeah, I ask the same thing all the time, Rob. Don't worry about it.
Right? Have you seen anything?
Yeah.
And it got conversation started, and it got him telling his story. And for me, never having experienced anything, I really found myself connecting to it. I was like, wow, because I was thinking about myself as a young boy watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think I was like 9 years old. And he was telling his story of when he was 12 years old and saw something. Well, actually had two encounters when he was, a young, I was going to say he wasn't this big, but when he was a young boy, and then never had anything happen for 50 years. Nothing, right? It just had two very profound experiences, and I was attracted to that.
Right, the experience. Okay.
I had never had anything, Steve. I had never had a personal encounter or a close encounter of any kind, but I was attracted as a storyteller, so that's when I kind of proposed different things to him. And here we are 10 years and 21 countries later.
Right. Wow, 21 countries. So, Rob, I guess like it sounds like you kind of had like an inciting incident that might have got you started into all this stuff. We would love to hear it.
Sure. I lived in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. That's right at the bottom of Lake Huron, right across from Port Huron, Michigan. So the lake comes down and goes into the river. Right at that corner is the city I lived in. Okay. I was in Scouts, and I went out. I was finished Scouts, and I went outside waiting for my mom to pick me up. She was about 15 minutes away. And as I went outside, these kids that were playing in the street said, "Hey, mister, there's a helicopter up in the sky." And I guess at 12 years old, my hat, tie, belt, shiny shoes, to them, I looked like a mister.
Right.
So I looked up and I saw this bright light moving slowly up at about 1,000 feet. And I said to the kids, that's not a helicopter. There's no sound. I didn't see any blades. And so I kept watching this thing. The kids disappeared. And I was waiting for my mom to arrive. And it was going slowly from the north to the south above me, like right beside the river there, St. Clair River. But the strange thing was, Steve, when it would change directions, it was instantaneous.
Uh-huh.
And, in 1966, it's like, well, we don't have anything that can change directions in the blink of an eye. It's like today's video games can do that. But in real life, something has to slow down or go in an arc to change directions, right?
Just so I can clarify for myself, meaning that it was going really fast or just materializing in other places?
No, it was going slow, but when it came to as far as it went, it didn't stop. All of a sudden, in the blink of the eye, it was going in the other direction.
Got you. So sharp right angle turns like you hear about. Okay, yeah.
But no right angle turn. It just was going directly in the opposite direction, instantaneously.
Wild. Okay.
So that's strange. And then it went to the north, and again, in the next blink of the eye, it was coming back towards me. And I thought, that's nothing that I know of that could do that. And then every time it changed direction, it came lower.
Oh.
And then I started getting goosebumps on my arms, and I felt like I was being stalked. And as I strained my eyes to look at this object, when I looked at this light, it looked like the light was coming from inside, that there was like a lens in the bottom of this thing, and that it was projected light coming from the inside, and I could see figures moving behind, like in front of this light.
So as it got closer, it became more of like a structured craft with light emanating around. Okay.
Yeah.
Was this round, or what was the craft shape?
It was round, but the bottom part had this light, and then I saw figures moving sort of in front of this light. And
1966.
Just then my heart started pounding. The hair goes up on my arms, and I'm thinking, oh my God, is this we called them flying saucers at that time. Is this a flying saucer? Now, this was right in the middle of that flap in Michigan across the border.
I was just thinking the same thing, the swamp gas situation, right? Where, JL and Hynek, they were having a massive flap there.
All of it. And the girls' school where they saw a craft come down, all of it. It was right in the middle of that, okay? And just then I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because it was getting closer, and now it's up at like 600 feet. And I was thinking, is it going to take me away? Just then my mom arrived. I says, Mom, you got to get out of the car. There's this flying saucer in the sky. And she just laughed. She says, oh, Rob, don't be silly. We got to go home. You've got your homework to do, and you got school. So I said, no, get out of the car. And finally, after about 15 seconds of negotiation, she got out of the car. We looked up, nothing there.
Gone.
Gone.
Yeah.
And I felt like a real idiot. I thought, have I imagined this whole thing? And so it was pretty quiet in the car going home. And when I got home, I told my dad and my brother, they just laughed. So I went to my room and kind of closed the door rather strongly. And that was it. Did my homework, went to school the next day, and kind of, moved on to other things. When I got home, my mother said, Rob, what you saw in the sky last night is all over the newspaper. And it was on the front page of the Sarnia Observer, on the second page, and more stories further in. And,
wow.
And I thought, yes, there is a God.
Yeah.
So,
validation.
right at that moment, I got validated. And, and Steve, I've never worried about it ever since, about talking about this stuff. A lot of people are nervous that they'll get shunned, that they'll get stigmatized, get labeled as crazy, could cost them their job. So they're like, mum's the word. Not me. It's like, well, I don't care. Go to the newspaper and look at it. Over 200 people had seen it, including police officers, doctors, lawyers, very credible people.
Yeah.
And they even interviewed the person at Selfridge Air Force Base on the U.S. side about, 10, 15 miles down the river. And on the second page, they had interviewed the the commander or whatever, he said right in the print, they sent 2 fighters after this thing, and it took off at a high rate of speed, literally
Wow.
left them in the dust. Now, that was great. So I got validated. Then my buddy across the street from me, John, he said, Rob, I became the celebrity at school that I'd seen this thing that was written up in the
Right.
paper. So he said, Rob, could I see one of those things? And I said, I don't know, maybe if we go on the roof of my house, 1-floor house, we got the antenna with all the rungs on it. You can
Hell yeah.
climb up. And so 2 weeks later, we did. And we had our, sky watching kit as kids, binoculars, walkie-talkies, tape recorder, blanket, pillow, paper, pen, all this stuff,
Right.
cameras, And we were up there about maybe 20, 30 minutes, and it was cold because this was in something like April. And it was kind of cold. And I was about to say, I said the words, John, I don't think we're going to, and as I said the word see, I don't think we're going to see anything. As I said the word see, a whole fleet of lights came from the north horizon, went across the sky in literally 1 second, 1.5 seconds, right across the heavens, like a whole fleet. And we said, holy cow, what was that? I don't know. We're just staring at the south horizon. 30 seconds later, they all came back right across the horizon to the north. And we were so excited, we tore off the roof, went down to the ground and ran across to his house because my parents were having coffee with his parents. We were so excited to tell them about all this, especially in light of my incident 2 weeks before that was written up in the paper. And they just laughed at us. And they says, guys, you got homework to do, blah, 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 blah. So
Right.
we went back to my place and watched Star Trek.
Yeah.
See, and I found that story, and I'll just say this quickly, Steve. I found that because Rob told me both the stories, right? Back to back. This is what happened. 200 people along the river saw this. And I was like, it's a cool story.
Yeah.
But everybody has that story. Like you run into a lot of people like saw an object, da da da. I was incredibly intrigued by his second story because I could visualize it. I can, as a film person, I'm like, 2 little boys, shimmying up an antenna, on the roof of their house with the little sky watching kit. And I went one step further with it, and I was like, and it's really fascinating to me that they willed this moment. They willed it. It wasn't like they went up with intention, right? This is like a pure intention moment where it's like, we want to see something. And that was attractive to me. I was like, well, isn't that interesting? So that's when I took the summer and I went through, I started getting on Facebook and going to all these different groups that are on Facebook, many. And a lot of them were doing what's called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which I'm sure you know about.
The whole CE5 thing, sure,
CE5,
yeah.
Protocols and meditation, consciousness, frequency, raising your frequency levels. And I found that fascinating. And I knew that there were groups all over the world, like in Europe, in Australia, just all South America. We have had a lot of experiences in South America. And they were out on the beaches, they were in the deserts, and they were in the forests, and they were using these protocols. And so I spent the summer connecting with these groups, and then I came to Rob, and I said, I don't think what happened to you the second time was random. I'm not talking about you were chosen or none of that. That's the feeling I had. But I said, I don't think what happened for you was random. I think that you had the first experience. They had an understanding that you were connecting to it at the heart level, and they came to you again. And I said, and there are other groups around the world that are doing this. How do you feel about going and connecting with these other groups around the world? And he said, I love it. I think that would be a great idea. And I said, okay, it's going to cost a lot of money and you're going to pay for it. And he was like, okay, we're good.
And
So
we've been traveling ever
Amazing.
since, Steve. And the things that we've experienced have been
Oh.
incredible.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
because you guys have been all over like South America, like I mean the Himalayas. Did you go to the Himalayas?
Not
No.
there,
No.
but we've been to 20 countries and we've
Good God.
interviewed hundreds of people. We've
Yeah.
spent thousands of hours in the field with all that equipment.
Right.
You know, I've got the full spectrum, I've got the infrared, I've got the thermal, I've got
Right.
visible, you know, zoom, time lapse, everything. And we have captured a few things. And I guess bigger is the experiences. Like, it's one thing,
Right.
the lights in the sky, but it's the crazy things that start happening around you. This cool high strangeness that we call.
The high strangeness.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like the little, you know, because I mean, like, you know, if you've done your ufological homework, you know, people, not every time, but oftentimes when they have like, you know, profound experiences with UFOs or UFO nuts, whatever you want to call them, there is like a residue with where paranormal stuff starts happening, or intuitions, or poltergeists, or lights are flying around your kitchen, putting your groceries away. You know what I mean? But like, I all jokes aside, like people have been reporting this for a long time. So I guess before we get into like the work of traveling around, like, do you recall any kind of like paranormal experiences after you had these sightings as a kid?
Are you talking to Mark or me there?
No, you, Rob.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, once we started into this stuff, the cool high strangeness started. And we've got like a list of 30 different profound things that have happened. And some of the bigger things is, you know, one of the members on a group, we were going to Australia, and she had to have her rent paid. Oh, it's for like March 1st, and we were leaving, you know, third week in February or whatever. And so she left a post-dated check in her dresser drawer, still in the book. And her ex was to come into her apartment because, you know, they share the kids, and take that check out and give to the landlord while we were in Australia. And to cut to the chase, the check was taken out of the book, given to the landlord. The landlord wrote on it, deposited it. And yet when we came back, the check was still in the book.
Oh,
The
phantom
was in the book,
check.
and nothing else written on it. Now, we took the check that was gone through the bank, and it was scanned by the bank. Here in Canada, they scanned the check.
With her handwriting and everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
the check gets destroyed after a week. They don't send them out anymore. They just scan them.
Sure.
So when, you know, the landlord had deposited the check, he, you know, wrote on the back, the teller stamped it with the wet stamp, the black stamp. So this is not a photo deposit. Okay.
Right.
This is a paper check that was presented to the teller, who wrote on it the account number, who stamped it, initialed it, and then it went through the banking system. Yet, when we got back, that check was still in the book. Now, we thought, well, did she write the check out twice or something? No. We took the scanned copy, blew it up to 8.5 by 11, and we took made a copy of the check that's still in the book and blew it up to 8.5 by 11. We placed them in front of the window, one on top of the other, reversed them. They were exact to the dot. Now,
wild.
We went to a handwriting expert who actually happens to also be, you know, used to be the executive director of MUFON Canada, Dave Palachuk. And he said, guys, you know, the only way that you could have the two checks being the same, with all the handwriting of the amount and signature, date, all that, is if it was done by a computer.
Right.
And obviously this was handwritten. No person can write the same two things exactly, ever. And so, you know, there might be a little bit narrower, higher, a little bit different, but these were exact. So what we had here, Steve, was apparently, and we've checked this out with scientists, and they say that there is the existence of, you know, infinite universes, infinite timelines, or whatever. The mathematics proves it. They said you've witnessed two different timelines here. There's the timeline where she wrote the check.
Wait, who told you this? A scientist? Someone? A scientist. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the scientists that told us this was Erling Strand in Norway, the Hesselen Lights.
Sure. Yeah. I love the work they do.
Erling's great.
And he had his own experiences to tell us also. But anyway, he said many people will experience these things, but they write them off. They say, "Oh, I must be imagining things. This is not possible. Oh, maybe it happened this way. Just forget it." Right? But we've got the proof. Okay. And so there's two timelines. One where the check was written and it, was given to the landlord. There's the other timeline where it was not given to the landlord. And we've crossed back to that one. So
weird.
There's one of many things like that. We've had, we could go on for 2 hours, but that's one big one. I'll tell you later about the iPhone, what happened to an iPhone. Tell you later.
Please do. I want to ask you just a couple, like 2 questions, because I it's rare I get to speak to people who have been to 21 countries documenting this stuff. And one question would be, it's kind of a 2-part question. Are what people seeing, like in these 21 different countries and these groups you've been around and documented, are they seeing pretty much the same thing? And is their approach to seeing this stuff the same? And 2, what is because obviously with UFOs and the paranormal in general and mythology and folklore, every culture has their own point of view on it. It's not like, I think in the probably, North America and Canada, in a lot of places, there's like aliens from another planet. But that doesn't necessarily mean what that's what it is, right? And in other cultures, sometimes, they'll have more of a religious or a metaphysical kind of point of view on it. And I'd be curious, just with your guys' experience, to hear about, one, are they seeing sort of the same thing, and is their approach the same, or are they, do they differ? And 2, what is the cultural takeaway for them?
It's a great question.
I could speak to the first question, and then Mark would be great to answer the second question.
Great. Let's do it like that.
So I would say, we've been taking this equipment around the world, and it really is very similar. The things that we're experiencing and the things that we see, it's all very similar. And I don't have much more to say around that. It is. We've been to over 20 countries, but you're right. The different cultures do put different things to it, and that's where Mark can come in.
Yeah,
I'm so really quick, Mark. I'm sorry, just so I'm crystal clear. I always like to be able to picture things in my head. Is what they're experiencing and what they're seeing, is it mostly light phenomenon in the sky, or is it structured craft? Or what is the typical average thing people are seeing, I suppose?
The best examples for me, Steve, and the 2 countries or the 2 areas of the world that have been the most interesting historically, culturally, and phenomenally has been Italy and has been South America. The work, I got the opportunity, thank you, Rob, to spend a lot of time in Italy working with historians, working with, people that study the petroglyphs. Okay. And the petroglyphs is a very big thing, we got the opportunity to go to Valmalenco and these Valcamonica, these very remote areas up in the mountains, little villages, and to hear those stories. These people, and I'll get to your answer, but
no, please go.
It's a little bit of context, Steve, to just kind of understand these people that we interviewed. They have no agenda, okay? And when I say no agenda, I mean this is a woman in her kitchen who contacts somebody that she knows that does UFOs and extraterrestrial work and tells a story. She's not selling a book.
Right.
She's not in a documentary. She has no agenda. She's not looking to change her life. Yeah. She doesn't want everybody showing up in her kitchen to talk about it.
She doesn't care if you believe her or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect way of saying it. Yeah. She doesn't care if you believe her or not. But yet she talks about a 1.5 foot extraterrestrial that showed up at her kitchen door that scared her and that she scared it. And they both screamed at the same time. Right? And they both ran away from each other, but she tells the story. And then it all goes back through the history. So this is kind of the connector to what you're saying, is the manifestation and let's call it the manifestation. Whether it
Right.
appears it can appear as an object, a physical object. Is it a physical object? Is it a holographic style projection of something that she's thinking about, and then they telepathically like tap into her head and they project it in front of her? Maybe. Who knows? We don't understand the science. We don't
Of
know.
course.
But everybody that we've talked to from Italy throughout South America, because we've been to six different countries in South America, and there's like a line, there's definitely a thread that connects all of these stories, from the objects to the actual extraterrestrial encounters. Whether or not they're completely similar, I think depends on the person. I think it
Right.
really does depend on the person. You
I
know,
agree.
it's not just structured in the box. You know, you think about Jacques Vallée. Like when
Yeah.
when we were in Lachlan with you, Jacques
Yeah.
Vallée was there. You know,
Yeah.
and he
I was
told
losing my mind.
he's amazing. Like,
I was
I mean,
fanboying out. Yeah.
this guy's brain. I mean, he has applied science, and he has had all these talks with different people, and he has an understanding. Him and Hynek, I mean, they were like a dream team. You know, you put Vallée and Hynek together, you got Hynek in the field collecting all the evidence, information. Rob and I say this very humbly, but we're kind of like Vallée, you know, Jacques Vallée and Hynek. He, you know, Rob is very, bless his heart, he's very technical. He knows the science. It's like in 10 years, he's got a PhD in cameras now, so he can apply all that. I'm the valet. Give me the witnesses. Put me in front of people. I want to know. I want to look in their eyes, and I want them to tell me what they saw, how it felt. And everybody, I don't know if this answers your question. I'm sorry. I'm kind of all over.
No. It totally is.
You know, but I really appreciate the question, because the question is excellent, because nobody has ever asked us that question. Nobody
Really?
has ever said culturally, what is the differential between people's experiences or encounters, and is there a commonality in those encounters? Well, the answer is no. It's not all the same. The objects that we've experienced, usually it's like, oh, it's like a light. It's got this kind of spherical, you know, all of that. But if you go a little deeper, it's totally different.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to think about UFOs sometimes for me is that they're like a Salvador Dali painting, where you'll have 100 people look at it and you'll get 100 different interpretations. Because like whenever somebody tells me what the UFOs are and represent, I'm like, okay. I lose interest fast, because like I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think it culturally, and like no one's right, no one's wrong. You know what I'm saying? So, but it sounds like you guys have a good approach where you treat people with respect, and you're not telling them about what they saw. Like it's saying like, well, you saw an extraterrestrial from the Pleiades planet. Like that's not good. That, as far as I'm concerned, is to try to ham fist your belief system onto other people. But I like the approach, gentlemen. I like the approach where, because I do think talking to witnesses like you're doing, and talking, you know, I mean, we've documented a lot of like Western Hemisphere witnesses in the UFO world, and it's always valuable. But I feel like we don't hear, at least in, you know, America or probably Canada, I can maybe speak for, we don't hear about these other countries like Australia or various countries in South America. So this is really great to get a new cultural interpretation on this stuff, which I think is really important. You know,
I get super excited, Steve. Like Rob and I have had, and I know Rob and I can talk about this one for probably too long, but I think we do definitely want to talk about South America, because we've had two phases in our career. You know, we've had two phases in what we've done. We came to some South American countries right at the beginning. I mean, if we could talk too long about what happened to us on the beaches of Playa Yaya in Peru. Like, it was ridiculous. We had 7 things happen to us in a span of 4 hours. But Sixto Paz Wells, for example, he's very prolific. His experiences span over 55, 60 years. We got involved with that very early, and we didn't have a clue. And I think
Right.
we can say that we didn't have a clue because we had only been doing it for about a year, and we spent way too many months in California looking up at balloons. No offense.
Yeah.
But you're excited, right? So you're playing with cameras and stuff. And then it was at the end of 2016 that we went to South America for the first time. And we went to Peru, and we had these experiences happen. But the most important part of that was when I say Playa Yaya, and we'll tell a story because we have to tell a story for Playa
Please.
Yaya. But when we went to Playa Yaya and we got out of the car and we were at this very prolific part of the beach. Like, I mean, when I looked it up later, it was like, oh, it's actually very prolific. We didn't know that. We just happened to be there. So random. We're right at this spot. And we got out of the car, and I'll never forget this moment for the rest of my life. There were these painters just painting, just painting on the beach, you know, painting like a hut or a house or whatever it was. And we walked up to them, and it was so funny because we said to them, have you ever seen anything? And the funny part for me visually is he's not even like, it's not a big deal. He's still painting.
Yeah.
I'm filming. He's like, oh, what? Orbs? Ovnis? Yeah, this ovni came out of the water and it came over the cliff. But for him, it's like another Saturday night. This is he didn't talk, you know, he didn't talk about it like I had this one thing happen in my life that changed me and my family. No, this is like, no, this happens here out on the beach. And we had never experienced that. But Rob has to tell a Playa Yaya story.
Yeah. So, and Sixto had told us to go to that beach. And it's funny because we showed up in the morning at the other end of the beach, and we got out of the car and looked around. We didn't feel right, Steve. We had this disappointed feeling. It's like, nah, this doesn't feel right. So we got back in the car and drove down the beach road. And then when we came to the spot where we did set up, it felt right. And a lot of times, this is how it happens. We connect on this sort of feeling level versus intellectual.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had set up on the beach, and I had my camera stuff set up, and it was suggested we do a meditation. And I remember I had two phones in my back pocket. You know, I had a SIM card from Peru. I had my Canadian SIM card. And I thought, you know, we were just going to sit in the sand. And I thought, oh, gosh, if I sit in the sand, I got to take my phones out of my pocket. They're going to get sand in them. I don't want to hold my phones. I'm just going to go do the meditation in the car myself.
Right.
So I finished after about 15 minutes. And as I walked back over to the tripod setup, Mark and our other team member were into a very heated discussion. And I thought, oh, man, here we are for, you know, we're going to be here for 2 weeks, and we're, you know, they're into this argument. This isn't right. You know, where's all the happiness here, right?
It's the light and love.
I said, guys, what's going on? And then, you know, Liz said, we did a meditation, Rob. And when I came out of the meditation, I look over and Mark's gone. He took off on me. And he said, she said, you never leave a woman alone on a South American beach. And I said, Mark, is that true? Mark says, no. I said, well, what's your side of the story? He said, when we came out of the meditation, I looked over to Liz and said, you mind if I just go for a walk down the beach? And Liz said, that's not true. And I looked at Mark. Mark said, that is true.
That's
and all of a sudden, it dawned on me, wait a minute, maybe they're both right. We've got some kind of a timeline thing going on here. And so I said, let's just agree that for each person, their side of the story is correct. That's what they experienced in their timeline. And so we agreed that let's not leave anybody alone during this expedition. So that was the very first thing that happened. And then, you know, I had my equipment. It was starting to get dark. So I wanted to change my one-day camera for a night vision camera. So I unscrewed the camera screw and I took it and I put it in my coat pocket. But as I put it in the coat pocket and had the camera in the other hand, I thought, wait a minute, be very careful with this screw. If you lose this in the sand, you'll never find it. And as I said the words to myself, never find it, all of a sudden I still had my hand in my pocket, but there was no screw between my fingers. And it's like, what the heck? Like, I haven't moved my hand. The screw was in between my fingers. I would just put it in, deciding what I should do with it, and fought this, that I can't lose it. I don't have another one, but yet it has just disappeared. I told Mark. Mark says, don't move anything. He took my hand out of my pocket. He put his hand in my coat pocket. There were no holes in the pocket.
Right.
Nothing. They looked on the sand. Nothing. It was gone. Okay, now I will tell you that 3 years later, I was walking by my pool table in my house here, and there was a Scrabble box on top of the pool table that I had put there for whatever reason. And as I walked by it, I saw that camera screw sitting on the box.
What the hell?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about apport phenomenon where things are appearing and disappearing. I mean, which is, I mean, that is firmly in the paranormal stuff, pal.
That was number two. That's number two thing that happened. And then number three thing that happened was this car showed up and was aiming his lights right at our car. It was parked on the beach here. And we were a little nervous. And then the guy backed up. And I was involved with my camera equipment, but nobody noticed. We were keeping an eye on things, but somehow something happened that he was like all of a sudden 800 feet away on the beach. Yeah. But we didn't see him go. There was some kind of a lapse of consciousness or a timeline change or something. We were watching this vehicle. We had our brains messed with. We don't know what happened. But all of a sudden, he was now 800 feet away. So we thought, okay, we're on a South American beach. We're all by ourselves. I think it's time to pack up.
Right.
You know, we're having all these strange things happen. So we packed up quietly. We didn't put the lights on in the car. Then we went to pull away, and I made the mistake, instead of backing up, because we were on a hard packed portion of the beach where maybe there had been a little cottage or a little store set up in years gone by, I made the mistake of pulling forward to do a big circle, and I went right into the loose sand.
Ooh.
We immediately got stuck, and we couldn't get out. The more I tried to get out, the more we just buried ourselves up to the axles in sand, right? So Liz had the presence of mind to call our rental car company because we had insurance, and they sent a tow truck. Okay, and they said it would be about an hour coming from Lima. And so we're waiting, and all of a sudden we did see a tow truck coming on the highway, and he slowed down and he's shining his big searchlight around to the beach. So we flashed the lights. We started the car up. We honked the horn. We got out of the car. I jumped up and down in front of the lights. Mark's got this on film.
Got it all on camera, yeah.
The guy just kept shining his light at us and everywhere as if he never saw us. And then he just kept driving down the beach. And we thought, man, oh man, what's going on here? And we called the car rental company and we says, we think your driver is lost. Tell them that we're right in front of the power plant. There's another thing. There's a power plant on the other side.
Sure.
Right. And she said, well, let me call him, try to get him zeroed in on where you are. She comes back on the line. She says, your driver is not there yet. That's not your driver. So in the meantime, we're waiting, and a police car drives along the highway. They have their lights going. That's typically how they cruise, with their lights on, just to let you know their presence, right?
Right.
And he turns and comes right down the road that's perpendicular to the beach, right to the beach road, comes within 15 feet of us, turns the corner. Now, we're flashing the lights, Steve, honking the horn, and the guy just kept driving as if we're not even there.
You guys were in a little bit of a bubble of unreality, it seems like.
The word that he just used is great, because all these experiences do come back to the talk that we had with Sixto Pasquales, where it was like the day before. And Sixto said, this is what you can experience. These are things. you could experience a portal. So
Mm-hmm.
Rob in the pocket and the screw, we started calling it a pocket portal because
Right.
it's like it went through the pocket,
Right.
right?
Right.
Same with what happened between me and our other participant on that on that expedition. Time loss. This seems like he talked about time loss, where you're going to be one place and somebody going to be somewhere else, and it's going to be like you weren't on the same timeline. And then, of course, the one that Rob's talking about now, which is to me the most prolific, is I'm filming it. I have my night camera and night vision, and I'm like, and Rob is saying it on camera, like, how could you not see us? Like, we're
Well, I
Right.
flashed.
said to Marcus, I said,
That's
what
right.
do you have to do? Stab somebody before the
Like,
cop?
what are you going to do?
And he just
And
Well,
then even Sixto said, you could experience something where it's like a bubble. Because that's what when
right.
you said the word bubble, he says it's
Yeah.
like a bubble forms over you and nobody can see you.
Yeah.
And they do that. They put the bubble over
Right.
you and
Well,
everything stands still. Please.
it sounds like a lot of stories from fairy lore more than it sounds like
Well,
UFO experience. To be honest, like I mean, like like sure, this could have been done by. I mean, like this isn't necessarily UFO experiences. Like this is just weird stuff, right? I also one question I have, like I'm sure you guys did research about like what this beach and this particular piece of like geography.
Yes.
Is there anything you've discovered? Like, is this something that happens in this area, or
Yeah.
like, is there weird stories from this particular beach?
It's
tons.
it's
Okay.
very close
Okay.
to Chilca, very close to the Chilca Desert. And
Uh-huh.
both Sixto Paz and Ricardo Gonzalez have had very prolific experiences, very big encounters, massive encounters.
Mhm.
And then even a couple of months later, again, somebody that we had met, Dr. Anthony Choi, had a group out there and a light had appeared. We had a light appear that didn't make any sense. It opened up for 4 seconds, exactly 120 frames, and closed up in front of us. We got it on camera. And
Right.
we're sitting there saying, okay, we don't know how we got here,
Yeah.
but everything is happening.
Wow. I mean, that is pretty awesome. I mean,
Well,
well, I guess like one question I would have for both of you, and you might not both have like at the time or even now feel the same way, but like, was this something that you were like, wow, cool, or ew, God, this is kind of maybe a
Well,
little weirder than I want it to be?
Steve, at first, we didn't connect all this cool high strangeness
No.
with UFOs, and we didn't
Right.
tell too many people,
Uh-huh.
especially the Czech and different things like this. We thought they were two different things, but we have found that when you start down this road of, looking for UFOs and wanting to make contact, all of this other stuff will find you. They
Yeah.
seem to
Yeah.
be all interconnected somehow, some way.
Right. Like, and like, are most of the experiences that you guys have had that have been, have any kind of profound, effect on you, have they been in geographic locations where this stuff is known to happen, or are you just like? Because sometimes I go back and forth, like, oh, I think there's definitely places where this stuff happens more than usual, or does it just happen everywhere? And
Well,
sometimes, like,
for
I mean, you
example,
saw this thing, I mean, like you saw a UFO with little bings in it when you were 12 in Canada, which is like around the border of like Michigan, and while this flap was going on, so it seems like you kind of experienced things in a lot of different places. So it's not
yeah.
so centralized, right?
Well,
It's like,
yeah,
Right.
Steve, I would categorize it. There are local hotspots that stuff
uh-huh,
reoccurs. Mount Shasta being one of them. In
sure,
California, and Mount Shasta, they've had the ET beings Antarel and Avika show up many times, and there's
hmm
many stories that people have of interacting with them.
right. The Grant Cameron story,
Yeah.
I've read it. Yeah, I saw a video on that years ago.
We
Yep.
did an expedition to Mount Shasta, and
Uh-huh.
we were set up on a farm that had a great view of the mountain. And there was maybe Mark, about 12 or 15 of us.
Yeah, I'd say good 15 for sure.
Yeah. And we were doing a meditation, a standing meditation, where at this point, everybody was quiet. You could hear a
Mhm.
pin drop. And I had all my cameras set up towards the mountain filming, all the different video cameras, everything filming. And all of a sudden, I heard a man's voice. And I took my phone and I instantly turned it on, pressed the button, did a screenshot to capture the time.
Right.
I didn't want to disrupt our meditation and say, "Oh, I heard a voice." No, I heard it. I did a screenshot. I'll go back when we get back to the house, which was on the same property, and I'll go back through the videos and find that exact moment, and we'll hear it. So yes, I did. Well, first of all, I opened my eyes and looked around. Is there a couple guys talking about 30 feet away from the group? And there wasn't. Right. Everybody was silent and involved in the meditation. So later on, when we went back to the house, I rewound the videos. And yes, there was a man's voice on every single video. And I played it back to one of our members of the group, Dan Berg. And I said, "Dan, what is this man saying?" And he said, "Avika." He's saying the word Avika. And I said, "Yeah." And I said to Dan, "Do you know who Avika is?" He said, "No." He didn't know the story of Avika and Antrell. Pardon me. And I said, "Avika is a famous female ET that appears at this mountain, like many times." So he didn't even know. And he confirmed that that's what the voice said, Avika.
Wow.
And it was recorded on all of the video cameras. Yet, when I had, let me turn my phone up. When I had heard the voice, nobody else heard it, but it was recorded in video, and it was the word Avika. So,
okay.
That was at Mount Shasta. So, yes, there's many locations around the world that seem to be famous hotspots, but it's not exclusive to those hotspots. It's both.
Right.
You will have people that no matter where they go, they will have sightings. And then you will have places that no matter who goes there, they have sightings and experiences. Now, when you combine those two, then it becomes very powerful, which is what we like to do.
Right. Well, that's I love it. It is one of these things where, Grant's story about that. Just for listeners who don't know, and you guys can help me clarify this, because you mentioned the Anterell thing, but according to Grant Cameron and some people, they were out at the this is at Mount Shasta, right? They were out there and they were doing the CE5 protocols and doing some meditation and stuff, and then a handful of people were called to a part of the grounds where they saw a 10-foot tall being wearing wearing a hoodie or something like that.
Yeah, and that's Anterell.
Right. And so, obviously, these are just story anecdotes. We don't know if it really happened, but did anyone document that in any way? I'm surprised no one was like, "Hey man, maybe we should roll the camera on this portal and a 10-foot tall being coming out."
I know that there are YouTube videos where they've talked about it after the experience.
Yeah, those I have seen, and I don't know Grant Cameron, but he seems like a good guy, it feels like a crazy thing to make up. And there was other people, kind of confirming the same story.
Paola Harris.
Paola Harris.
Yeah,
sure.
She was there with Ricardo Gonzalez and had her own encounter with Anterell. And just as a preface, before we went back to Mount Shasta, because that was July of 2019, we had spent considerable time with Ricardo Gonzalez and Paola Harris and other different people. We spent 18 days in Peru. Right. And during that time, Ricardo, who's had a very close relationship with Anterell since he was 19 years old, he kept talking about Anterell and how Anterell was sending him different messages, had been sending him messages his whole life. And part of the messages were for Rob and I, basically, what you're doing is important. The work that you're doing is important. We're with you. And then 2 months later, we're at Mount Shasta and Rob records Anterell, and we can only assume it's Anterell because of the description that people have given us of his voice, how it's very low, kind of monotone, kind of not robotic, but let's just say monotone. And that's the recording. Even when I listen to it, Evika, it's all very monotone. And Grant's stories, Paola Harris's stories, Ricardo Gonzalez's stories, and now we have our own.
Right. Wild.
And we're
Very
going back. We should plug the fact we're going back to Mount Shasta
okay.
in
Yeah,
August.
yeah. And there's
And what's the hope? What's the hope when you go back
Okay.
to?
So
Please, Rob.
here's the thing, Steve. There's another thing that you may not be aware of. So about 2 years after we started doing the UFO stuff, I learned about this ability. One of the people in Australia we met, she teaches kids this ability to see blindfolded. Okay. You may
Okay.
have heard about this stuff.
I have not. No.
Okay.
This is really amazing.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
became interested in it, and I wrote her because she sent me a video of her grandkids running around the backyard with blindfolds on as if they can see, playing hide and go seek and doing all these things. And I sent her back a text. I says, Leonie, is this a joke or is this true? Because the video went on for like 3 minutes, and I thought, who's going to do a joke for 3 minutes long? I said, is this a joke or is it true? If it's true, I want to do this. She wrote back and said, yes, Rob, it's true. I've been teaching my grandkids. There's a lady in Ottawa, Canada, who teaches it. Make a long story short, we went up to Ottawa and we started learning how to do this. And I've been doing this for, gosh, like close to 8 years now. I've been teaching a lot of people. I've been teaching blind people to be able to see, and they can start to perceive their surroundings. You know, the truth is, with our eyes, you know, it comes into our eyes and we can see, but all of that light is just energy.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the energy is concentrated into the eye and we make a visual picture, but that energy can come directly into the brain, and our brain can also make the picture. Okay?
Right.
Kids can do this very quickly. Adults, it takes longer. And so I've been doing seminars. So for the first time, we're going to do a combo seminar where at Mount Shasta, we're going to put it out there for, you know, adults who want to learn the blindfold seeing and who also have an interest in UFOs. Because
Mhm.
during the day, it's going to be August 10th to 15th, and it'll be posted pretty soon on the, you know, my seeing website, which is visionwithouteyes.com.
Right.
Pretty soon we're going to be posting it. We've already got a waiting list. But the idea is during the day, we're going to teach the folks, the adults, to learn how to see blindfolded.
That's
And in
awesome.
the evening, we will be sky watching. Now,
Okay.
it's
Fun.
like, well, what's the connection here? Here's the connection. I've met blind people who can see orbs.
Yeah.
Okay. And why can they see the orbs? Because they're picking up the energy out of the visible spectrum directly to their brain. Okay. And the idea is when you can see with this ability, it's not just the visible realm. I've got videos where we've done tests where I'm in a darkened room and there's an infrared camera capturing me getting all the colors correct, all the numbers, the symbols, everything correct. It's pitch black darkness. How can I read all these things? Well, because it's outside the visible spectrum, and with your mind sight, you can see outside the visible spectrum, Steve. So I've got
Okay.
videos where it's pitch black. There isn't even infrared light. It's just no light. We've sealed the doors. We've covered the windows with black plastic. And yet I'm getting everything that Wendy was showing me. And so we want to invite people to come to the seminar when they learn to see with their mind sight. Not only is it visible, but it's into the ultraviolet and, you know, far range, and into the infrared and far into the heat range. And that's where a lot of these anomalies will show up outside of the visible range. So what we're hoping to do is, you know, the folks will see this stuff with their mind sight, and then they can direct me where to point the camera. Okay.
Interesting.
Well, my cameras are full spectrum. They're infrared. They're thermal. So, you know, in a normal time, I might be looking in the sky, but there might be something behind me that's showing up out of the visible range that nobody sees. But on this Mount Shasta expedition, we're going to have the folks, because we're going to have eyes all around us, they're going to point out where I point the camera. Now, if the people are just looking with their visible eyes, they may not see it.
Mhm.
But if they can see it with their mind sight vision, I will also be able to document it with my cameras, because my cameras can film outside the visible range of what we can normally see with our eyes. So this is going to be a really cool expedition that we're setting up.
Right. Sounds like it. Well, like I just, for my own clarification, sometimes I need to have it dumbed down. But like, so if I were to put a those blackout, like a blackout blindfold on you, where you literally definitely could not see, no light was leaking through. Yes, exactly, something like that. And I was to stand in front of you and hold like a deck of cards, you would be able to tell me like 4 of diamonds.
Yep. There's 2 levels of this.
I mean, have you considered like trying to like actually like volunteer yourself to be studied? Because I mean, like if you are able to do this, this is truly groundbreaking science.
It's proven, Steve. This is proven. You watch his videos,
right? Right. No, I'm not. I am not like saying it's not. But I'm saying like, have you guys like considered like approaching like a Stanford research center and saying like, hey yo, I mean, like maybe you want to study me because like this is some pretty like next level stuff. If you can see without your eyes, that changes the game right there, pal.
There's a PhD researcher in Spain, Alex Gomez, and he's written the foreword on a big book on seeing without eyes is possible. It's called That Fix. It's one of the best books out there at the moment. Amazing. And he's written the foreword, and he's part of a research study around this, and we have 3 of our people in our group that he's studying. We've got Claudia Froelich, who can see blindfolded. She's going blind with retina pigmentosis, where it's like tunnel vision that's closing right up. She's learning this so that when she does, if and when she goes blind, she can continue to see. My own niece, Daniela Gonzalez, Costa Rica, he's studying her. We've got Medalia Bourguen, who's one of our trainers, who's one of our demonstrators. He's studying her. So yes, all of this is being studied on a scientific basis so that we can have all the, the proof that way. It's not just, hearsay or anecdotal. It'll be scientifically proven. All of it.
And repeated and like using the scientific method to document. That'd be incredible. You know what's pretty amazing, Rob, is that like, I always like to think about, and whenever I'm, lucky enough to talk to witnesses of profound paranormal activity or ufological activity, I'm always like, how do you think your experience changed you? And my God, I mean, like, it sounds like had you not seen these UFO experiences when you were 12 years old, when you were, a mister to these other little kids, like now, I mean, look how like what it's the dramatic path that has been laid before you. I mean, like it is one of these things where I feel like that's what's probably the most interesting thing about UFOs to me. It's sure the sighting and what you see is very important, but like how does it affect people's lives and worldview? And it sounds like it's had an immense impact on you, obviously. Like,
well, yeah, and what we've discovered is literally, Steve, anything's possible. Like in our material world, we actually go around with a very narrow view of what the world really is. And, they always say, you should keep an open mind. It's like a parachute. It doesn't work unless it's open, right?
Yeah.
So, this stuff has opened our mind big time.
I bet.
And, because of what we've experienced, you could say we really have experienced the real world. Most of the people haven't. They've, go to work every day, come home, and they've got a very narrow view of what the world really is. And I feel a little bit sad about that for humanity, but it's true. Those folks would tend to think that we are kooks.
Right.
But that is the reason why Mark and I go out on this stuff together. Because when we experience things, we then know at the future at any time, we can revalidate it and say, Mark, remember when that happened? What did you experience? So we keep ourselves sane and on ground level on that basis. Because, when you have something happen alone, your brain can play tricks with you. And later on, eventually you discount it and say, well, that didn't really happen.
Yeah, I had a little misfiring on my brain synapse where I was too tired. I mean, like, I've experienced some like kind of weird stuff by myself, but I always like find a reason to shoot it down, like, you were tired or you smoked too much weed that day or something, like.
When you have it happen with other people, then it's validated permanently. But what I'm saying is it does change you, and it allows you to be a more rounded person, a more accepting person, a more humble person,
right?
Because there are many things so much bigger than ourselves, and we're only just beginning to understand some of this stuff, some of it which, the mathematical science backs it up in theory, but the scientists don't have any proof to it. Well, we're actually giving them the proof that backs up their own scientific theorems. So I don't know, we just really enjoy experiencing this stuff. We like to talk about it, document it, and it is the real world. It really is.
Right. Well, it almost sounds like, you guys got into this to document things seen in the sky. Yeah. But what, but anyone who sticks around this stuff long enough, it's like, or maybe I should be putting my ear to the ground. Like, it's like, it's not, I feel like when you read enough about this stuff, and I've been very armchair with this stuff. I mostly read about it and, taking in from other people's experiences. But it does seem like it's like, eventually it's like looking up, while it's, you guys are a testament to have captured stuff and seen stuff, and experienced stuff. But it seems like it's kind of all around, like, right? Where...
Yeah, I liked what you're saying, Steve, a lot, because one of the first lessons that we got was when we were in Peru and we were talking to a guy who was a part of, Mission Rama, and he said to us, look for the signs. It was one of the first kind of feelings that he gave to us. He said exactly what you said. It's all around you. Like, you're like this all the time. You're looking straight, or, you can do this.
Yeah.
But there's things going on either side. And the best things that have happened to us in terms of having a profound effect on us, like changing your life, changing your perspective, what inspires you, you bring it into your life. Like it becomes a part of your life. These little messages that you receive, that you're not ignoring them anymore. It's like, because you're not distracted as much as maybe you used to be. Because when you wake up, you brush your teeth, you have your meal, you go to work. It's like, you're on that conveyor belt of life experience. But what are the things that happen around you that you notice that have a profound effect on you? And they actually change your mode of thinking. They change your mode of treating other people. They inspire you. I mean, we say that all the time. We love to take our experiences and inspire and educate. If we can take that to the next generation. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm, being like a preacher here or anything, but if we can take those experiences and take them to people and tell them our stories, then maybe, just maybe, they'll take the blinders off.
Right.
Take a look around,
Well, it's a way of contributing to something you're very interested in. It's like, I love UFOs. If I felt like I had a way to contribute and push the ball a little further down the field, I would do it. I don't, but like, it sounds like that's what you guys are doing. And you're carrying the ball a little further down the field and say like, hey, now these next generations, what can you do with it? So exactly. I my hat's off to you. I think what you're, and also like, you guys have a unique approach. I mean, like, you're actually like, as opposed to like people say like, well, I'm going to go out and film this thing, but like, you guys are just doing it, like, which is great, because I mean, like, it's fun to make these plans and say like, man, one day I'd love to, but you guys are actually, it's like, or we'll just go do it, and then
exactly. Like, and Steve, you are in California. You're going to be just down the road from us.
I'm not anymore. I live in Omaha, Nebraska now.
Okay. Because
yeah.
Why don't you join us on this?
Oh, I'd love to, but I'd probably be, when are you doing it?
August 10th to 15th.
August 10th. I have something going on in August, but I'll go.
Check your calendar.
Look, if I can meet an alien named Andrel coming out of a portal with a hoodie, yes, please. I would enjoy that, or I'd be horrified and it would like completely disrupt my normal life. But either way, I'm willing to take the risk.
And we know we're connected. Look at all that crazy stuff that happened when we were doing that interview with each other.
That is true. That is really weird. So, listeners, I'll just tell them the kind of a bridge version. But I was doing an interview with you guys, right? And we were like in the main like dining hall. I think it was like taco day for lunch, and everyone's getting their little hard shelled tacos. It was fun to watch Jacques Vallée eating like a hard shelled like junk taco. That was like one of my favorite moments. Anyway, I'm interviewing you guys, and I know this for a fact because we had just taken a break. The sound guy did to recharge all his batteries, and so we had just started shooting again. And I know for a fact because his battery thing was full, and he was putting on a new battery pack on me, which was totally full. And within about 90 seconds of the interview, all our batteries, mine, yours, and the sound guy, who's like a wildly talented professional sound guy, he's like, hold on, I have to stop. Everything drained.
Yeah.
And I will say that was really weird. I was like, because it wasn't just my battery, it was all the batteries.
All of them. Yeah.
What the hell? And we had like really great equipment. This is not like, Radio Shack, like junk stuff. It was like state of the art sound gear.
You remember, we were just starting to talk about the kinds of things that can happen on an expedition, right?
Yeah.
And
it was really weird.
And we're at a UFO conference, so right in the main area there, we had an experience live on camera.
Yeah. With Jacques Vallée in the background eating like a hard shell beef taco. This refined French scientist. No, it was. I mean, that really was a fun moment. So wild though. It seems like you guys have just as much as you had like the classic unidentified flying objects in the sky, but you've had almost like just as much
more
like true weird like paranormal activity.
Even more
really. So now I want to ask you guys this: like, do you guys live close to, like, are you guys like in the same region of Canada now?
Oh, me?
No. You guys live close
to America.
You're in South America right now?
Colombia right now, yeah.
Oh, wow. Is that where you live?
No, I'm just stationed here because Rob and I produced a lot of documentaries over the last 2.5, almost 3 years. I'll say this quickly, but it was a concentrated amount of filming in Italy, Europe, and South America. Mm-hmm. So the countries that we've been to recently, was last summer, actually. Summer before that, we were in Europe, and then we went to Italy, and then we did Colombia, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil. We did all these different countries. So I come back to the countries to connect with everybody and get everybody excited about the documentaries and different things. Before I forget, though, this is just one more story that Rob has.
Please.
The Colombia one, Rob.
Okay.
The iPhone, man.
Okay. So typically, Steve, when we go on an expedition, we will have cool high strangeness happen. If it doesn't happen on the expedition, it usually happens to the people back home around us. But it's one or the other. So I'll tell you the story. So, the previous Christmas, I had bought my partner an iPhone for Christmas, iPhone 14, and he bought me one. Mm-hmm. So in Canada, they're like $1,500. They're expensive, Canadian.
Oh, God. They're going to get worse, too.
Oh, I know. And so right away, I went and had the screen put on so that it doesn't crack. And I said to Antonio, my partner, can I take your phone in? And he said, well, next time we're at the mall, we'll do it. Well, it never came up. So he didn't put his screensaver on, and we were all out in the kitchen, his sister, his mom, there was me, our friend Pedro. Everybody we had supper or something, we're just chatting. And his phone was on the counter island there in the middle. He went to grab it, and it dropped out of his hand on the tile floor and cracked the screen. And he picked it up and he says, oh man, my phone's cracked. And he wasn't happy. This was a gift that he'd gotten just 2 months before, right? And so I said, give it to me, because I had seen an example where I saw somebody, a receptionist at a doctor's office. She had a phone call. She went to grab her phone and it dropped out, fell on the floor, cracked. She put the phone up to her ear, and then I saw it bleeding and the blood dripping down her white, clinic uniform. And I rushed over and I says, have you got some tape? So put tape on the screen to cover all these cracks. You can still use the phone. And so she did. But anyway, so I grabbed the phone out of his hand. I took the case off and I took some clear packing tape, put it across the crack. So if you got your phone, the crack went up like that. It was one clean, sharp crack right across. And I felt it going across. Yeah, that's razor sharp, right? Don't run your finger along it. You're going to slice your finger.
Right.
So I trimmed the tape, put the case back on, gave it to him, and everything's fine. And after a couple of weeks, the tape starts to peel. So I said, give me your phone. I took the tape off. The crack is there. I felt it. And I took the tape, put it on there, trimmed the sides, put the case back on, gave it to him. And I did it one more time before Marcus and I were on an expedition in Colombia. Okay, not much happened on that particular expedition. The very last night, I get a call from Antonio. We're out in the field trying to document stuff. And he says, my iPhone? And I said, yeah. And he said, it had a crack on the screen, right? And I said, yeah. He said, well, just a few minutes ago, I took the tape off to change it, and there's no crack. And I said, whoa. Really? And he said, yeah. He said, are you sure there was a crack on? I said, Antonio, everybody in the kitchen saw it. I felt it. That's why I put the tape on it. And every time I changed it and it was there, I felt it. And he said, well, there's no crack now. The screen is all intact. Wow. And I thought, well, is he playing a joke on me? Did he go get a new phone? Whatever.
Right.
So when I got home, I checked the receipt and I went into his phone and I checked the serial number. It's the same phone. He never changed the screen. He never changed the phone. He didn't do nothing. This is another example of a timeline change.
Right.
We've had probably about 4 timeline change examples. Yeah. Okay, there's some other ones we have too that are pretty prolific. But anyway, so, again, there's 2 timelines. In one timeline, he dropped the phone because it's a random thing. Okay. In another timeline, he didn't drop the phone. So we have gone from one timeline and changed over to another. Okay.
Mark, does this stuff only happen around Rob?
Well,
Rob. I'm trying to suss out here. And obviously we don't know for sure, but Rob, are you the lightning rod for all this weird stuff, man?
I don't know. We've talked to other people. Erling Strand himself told us of a story in his hometown in Norway. He said one morning that the newspaper came out and they started getting calls from irate subscribers. What is this, a trash tabloid? And they said, no. This is the village or the town paper that everybody respects that gathers credible information and prints it.
Mm-hmm.
And the person at the paper said, well, why are you saying this? And they said, well, you have a story on the front page of something that happened in this street. And on the street, you're showing on this side 2 houses. There's only one house on that side of the street. And they said, well, that can't be. Our photographer went out and took a picture and that's that. They said, no, send your cameraman out again and see what the truth is. So the paper sent the cameraman out again and there's only one house on the street. So there's a documented case. And Erling Strand says, again, these are timeline issues where, somehow people cross the timelines. And when the cameraman went out to get a supporting picture of this news story, at that moment, he changed timelines into another timeline where there had been 2 houses built on that side of the street in that spot.
And just a little bit of context for the listeners. In case you don't know, Erling Strand is one of the researchers who is in charge of the Hestelen. It's this research center that they've been fully funded by, I think, the government, right, of Norway, and they document this one region where there's constantly, 24/7. They have multiple high-tech cameras, all the gear in the world you would ever want, state of the art, and they have caught some quite amazing light phenomenon in this area. But Erling Strand, from what I know about him, doesn't seem like the kind of guy who has flights of fancy. He's a very matter of fact, and he doesn't talk about high strangeness too much. He's kind of just about the science. But to hear that is really interesting. And I love the work they do there. I think it's when people say oh, Skinwalker Ranch is the first time anyone's ever done a documentation of I'm like, No, they've been doing it in Norway since the 80s, actually.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Hessel Lights Project. The Hessel Lights Project. Yep.
It's probably the most prolific, or like, I don't know. It's the most legitimate like project of this sort, like that's been going for decades. So
Absolutely.
wow.
I'll mention, Steve, something you just said beforehand was, and again, this is just a hypothesis. This is not me
Mm-hmm.
basing it on anything other than our experiences, because
Sure.
that's the only thing Rob and I can do. Like, people ask us, why do you think this comes to you? Why do you
Right.
think it follows you around?
Right.
I think that's a great question, because I personally think it's, if you let it in, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're accepting of it and you're saying, okay, look I'm not scared, because we haven't experienced anything scary.
Right.
We haven't. I know other people have. I know other people who have
Certainly. Yeah.
abductions and different experiences.
Absolutely.
We get excited like a couple of kids. I mean, we just do. I mean, we just
Yeah.
get super excited about it. We're like, what's going to happen this time? I mean, I'll give just a small example. Is when we went to Bugarash. We went to Bugarash in France, and that was about a year and a half ago. And we had every problem getting there. Like, I mean, every logistical
Right. Right.
delayed flights. There's Rob with all his equipment. The equipment doesn't show up, gets put on another plane.
Ugh, the worst.
Oh, it was a nightmare. The whole thing was a nightmare. And we only had two nights in Bugarash. It was a very tight opportunity for us to go to France and go to Spain and then travel over to the United Kingdom and stuff. And when we got there, it was like, I don't know, 11 o'clock at night, because we were supposed to be there at 11 in the morning. It was like an 11, 12-hour time. It was horrible. And we're tired, like super, super tired. But Rob, being Rob, bless his heart again, he says, well, we got to go out. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm a bit of a whiner. But I say, yeah, okay, we got to go. But we got no equipment. And then Rob's like, it doesn't matter. Let's go.
Yeah.
We should do it anyways. We should just go.
Absolutely. You're there.
We're there. Like, we're in Bugarash. Like, I mean, we came all this way. No equipment, no problem. Because we made that decision a very long time ago that there would be times that we would go out without equipment and experience on our own, and let them know that it's not all about the documentation. We're there for the experience. So we went out. And so we're driving. Quick story. We're driving around the mountain. And I should point out, this mountain is prolific. And it's prolific because this kind of ties into Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Steven Spielberg, when he was making Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he knew all about Bugarash. He knew all about this mountain, because this mountain was called by the locals the UFO Garage.
I love it.
Okay, so there's Steven Spielberg. He comes to the village and he says to the villagers, I want to come here and shoot my film, my motion picture. All the locals said, we don't want you here because they'll go away.
Yeah.
They'll
Okay.
go away. They won't come anymore.
Right.
If you make this into some big Hollywood glamorized kind of a deal. So I'm attracted to that. And I say to Rob, let's go. We're going to go to Bugarash. And then Rob says that night, well, let's go. So we're driving and it's like, where do we stop? Where do we go? And I said to Rob, where are we going to stop? Rob's like, right here. We're going to stop right here. Let's stop right here. Pulls the car in, parks the car. Within 15 minutes, it's 12:45 in the morning. Everything shows up. Everything.
Like what? Give me an example.
Oh, shoot, man. This was the greatest, most unbelievable light show. It was like they had multiple projectors projecting lights in the clouds and you're asking yourself, where's the airport?
Yeah, right. All the logistical questions. Yeah.
Where are the big spotlights? Like, how are they doing this? How is this being performed for us? It lasted for 2 hours.
Jesus.
And these are lights appearing everywhere, flowing like water up and around the mountain. It's ridiculous. And you're thinking, well, maybe it's like Hesselin, maybe is this like the Marfa lights? Is this, so your mind takes you there, right?
Yeah, of course.
I personally, end of my story, but I personally remember one just kind of like, we're here, the three of us, and then suddenly it just snaps out in front of us, stays there like a triangle.
Like close to you?
Like close.
Wow.
And it sits there for 5 or 6 seconds. And I remember going like this. I fell back, like physically. Because I was
like, how big was this thing?
Oh, it was a good size. Like it had to be to the eye, it's like 10 feet wide.
Okay.
And then it just goes back up over our heads. So for 2 hours it did that. And I'll never forget this. The closing of the story is Rob, I'm saying to Rob, Rob's like, well, we're going to stay, right? I'm like, oh yeah, we're not leaving. We're not going anywhere. I don't care how tired we are. We're not
Right.
And he's like, well, when they decide to go, that's when we'll go. Within 10 seconds. I mean, a countdown to 10. Boom. Gone. Left at exactly 2:45. Started at 12:45. Left at 2:45. Gone.
Wow. It just vanished like the show was over.
Incredible.
But it was
just like, okay, we came out.
Yeah, it's like, Steve, it looked to me like there were all these lights above the clouds chasing each other. Like this whole show of all these lights putting on a whole big carnival show for us in the middle of nowhere. We're in the Pyrenees Mountains, 150, 200 miles away from the nearest airport. There's just a couple little villages of maybe a few hundred people, and that's it. Like we're in.
And then one came down low to you.
Yeah,
and they were going around making these patterns and going into the mountain and coming out.
So gorgeous.
It just went on for 2 hours. Now, we filmed everything with our iPhones, but the lights were not quite strong enough.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, right.
Now,
the iPhone doesn't work very well for that. Anything at night,
we had a tremendous experience of this light show, of these crafts, of these light beings. I don't know what you call them, but it was personalized for the three of us. We all witnessed it, so we can, to this day, compare stories, and they're the same. It happened to us for 2 solid hours. And how is it that I said, well, when they stop, we'll go. And literally 10 seconds later, we had that last one happen that Mark describes the finale.
Yep.
And then that was it.
It's like a finale. Yeah, finale, yeah.
Now,
Rob, I want to ask you a quick question, Rob. So, like, when you when you had your initial experience at 12, right, and it did start out as a light phenomenon, does what you saw when you were 12 and then what you were seeing, for example, in France, are there similarities, or does this feel like a whole different thing?
Yeah, it was a whole different thing. The one light when I was a kid was very distinct and just moving back and forth. What we had in France, these lights were kind of diffuse, but they were defined in a diffuse way. And it was like this whole choreographed display just for
ballet.
us.
Like a drone show or something. Yeah.
There were no drones.
Yeah.
Like a drone show. That's a good way to put it.
But,
all these
like it was some display.
But it was
theater for you.
It was like it was on the other side of the cloud, sort of. But when we had that one that sort of came right over us and went, that was like in front of us. Like, it's hard to explain. All I know is that all three of us saw it and we experienced it. And it's probably the most prolific thing we saw in the 10 years that we've been out doing this. And
that's pretty wild. Yeah, that's amazing.
Here's the other part of the story. So we have found, this is kind of crazy, but it's almost like the yin and the yang. When we have things really screw up, as we did there, like all my equipment was stuck back in Canada, and when things screw up, we showed up at our hotel 12 hours late. So, we should have just gone to bed, but no, let's go out. Maybe we'll see something. And when it was said, well, where should we didn't even know if the mountain was beside us. It was pitch black. And we said, well, where should we go to look at this mountain? And right away, I said, here. Right away, as we were in a bend in the road, there was another road that came out of the highway that came out as a bit of a V. So there was all this gravel area that was large that we could set up. But as soon as somebody said, where shall we go? Like literally 2 seconds, I then showed up with the car lights, this area, 2 seconds later, and I said, right here. And it was right there that we had this whole light show. Everything's connected, but when we have things go wrong, it seems like there's this balance. And it seems like if everything's going right, well, maybe you'll have a little bit of things happen. But if you take that and you go like that with it, the more things that go wrong on this side, the greater the experiences are going to be on this side. We've seen
The
that
psychology. Yeah.
over again.
The
Right.
way Rob has said it, it's like the psychology of it. It's like in 10 years, you start off with, "Ooh, wow, this is really cool." And then you actually evolve to a point of trying to psychologically get an understanding of it. You know,
Right.
like we had that happen in Italy. I always create an example, but we had it in Italy. It was our fourth night. We were going to go up to a cathedral in Torino, Italy,
Yeah.
and it was the worst storm. I got iPhone footage of like the craziest messed up storm.
Right. Right.
I said to Rob, I said, no cameras tonight. I mean, it's probably even dangerous to be up here, you know, with the thunder and the lightning and the craziness. But we get up there and it rains and thunders and lightnings for 3 hours. Like it's a mess. Like it's a mess. But Rob and I have been friends. He's one of my best friends for 15 years. So what do? We start telling our stories. We start telling jokes. We start playing music.
Yeah.
We have a good time. We have our own
Yeah.
little party. And we're not caring about the cameras. We don't care about it anymore. Then it becomes, if they have, because I've been told this, and it's just a little aside, but I've been told that they study our human emotions. These are different theories I've gotten from different scientists and experiencers who say, you know, they're probably pretty fascinated by us because we're human and we have these human emotions. And, you know, sometimes we're mad, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're laughing like dummies, you know, like
Sometimes we murder each other.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
We're a violent species.
we're a violent species, you know. So maybe they're looking at us in this car and we're laughing and having a good time. And
Right.
And suddenly, while we're having a good time, we decided to do a little 20-minute meditation. We hadn't done a meditation in a really long time, days, weeks, months. Like, I mean, a long time, because you just forget. And we did the meditation, come out of the meditation, and within seconds of the meditation finishing, this light appears behind the car. Excuse me. And the first thing the mind says is car, right? Car behind our car on the road. So
Yeah.
that's what Rob says, you know, instinctively. Oh, there's a car behind us. But then it's like you start to think about it and you go, well, wait a minute. The road is barely the width of a car itself. Like, and it disappeared. So where did it turn around?
Yeah.
How did it turn around?
Right.
We would have seen it turn around. Like we would have seen that too. We would have seen it come up, and we definitely would have seen it turn around.
You would have noticed the absence of light, and then
exactly the absence of light. So we're like, this doesn't make any sense. So what do? We get in the car. Like we're in the car. We decide to drive out, and we look at the road, and we're like, well, where did it go? Where did anything start and stop? Like, where did it? We drive 1.5 kilometers down the road. And the road is just not wide enough to make a turn. Like you can't do a 3-point at all. There's no chance.
Right.
We go all the way down. We go all the way back up the other side. We're looking. We're like, this is impossible. This is crazy. I said, we determined it. Our logical brain said car, but it's a car until it's not a car. And we've had that happen more than a few times. It's not a car. And we got back to our spot. Started doing other things, said, okay, it's time to leave. Time to leave. Within seconds of saying time to leave, it happened again. The same light appeared and did this thing. Confirmation.
Yeah. Wow, guy. I mean, like y'all have had some experiences. I'm very jealous. First off, that you get to travel the world doing something like this. I mean, what could be cooler? And second, it's like it seems like it's really bearing fruit for you
It's
all.
amazing.
And the thing about this stuff, like no matter what the footage you get, right, or the stories you tell, it's like you have to experience this stuff for yourself, probably to really like.
Good way, honey.
But what I will say, what I love so much, I'm a broken record on this, but like in America, right? For instance, for example, the modern ufology seems most of the effort and energy is really pushed to government disclosure, which I personally think is absolute waste of time and a joke. If they have stuff, first off, they're never going to show us. And if they, and I also think the only thing disclosed is that they have no idea what this stuff is either, right?
Exactly.
But I like what y'all are doing. It's like, well, we could sit around here and wait for the experience you had when you were 12 to happen again, or we can go chase the phenomenon to places. You know, it's like you're hot on the trail, and it seems like, I mean, it seems like it's working, and I just think that's so cool. Like, and also, at the end of the day, isn't it just fun as adults to go adventure?
Yes.
Well, it is. It's like
Right? There's no downside to what you're doing.
it's like this cat and mouse game with us, and we're just going
Right.
with it and having fun. It seems to be harmless. It chases us, we chase it, and the crazy things that happen, and we just laugh and enjoy the experience.
Well, do you mind if I, before I let you guys go, I liked, it's, I'm all for speculation and just doing thought experiments about what the stuff can mean and represent. But I want to leave you guys with these questions, and you may have different answers. But do you think this phenomenon is dependent on someone viewing it for it to manifest, or do you think there's UFOs flying around the sky that could be seen, but people just aren't looking at it? Like, do you think it needs you, Rob, as the viewer, or those kids in the street for it to manifest? Like, do you think this is a display for people, or it's totally independent and they're just flying around but people aren't looking up?
That's a good question, Steve. It
Fantastic
probably
question.
is more the idea that it needs a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Co-creative, like there's a co-creative aspect.
It
Yeah,
probably is. And, I often wonder through my life if people's collective consciousness actually creates this.
Uh-huh.
I've wondered that many times.
Carl Jung thought so. Yeah, he wrote a book about UFOs.
I've wondered many times. And I guess I would just draw the example if, our brains or our consciousness, like our individual computers that are widely separated, but in the same way that, you have these networks that will utilize everybody's computer in a massive computer computational project. The individual computers don't even know what they're being used for. Right? But collectively, they're running these powerful projects. I've often wondered if our consciousness, or if all the individual people's brains and consciousness and minds are being tapped into, and somehow collectively on another level, we create this. And then individual people get to actually interact with it. Because that's what I thought when I had that first thing happen, because it was during that flap of Michigan when you were seeing hundreds of things everywhere. And somehow I also tapped into it, and 200 other people in our town tapped into it. I mean, I don't know that to be true, but I keep wondering if that is true, Steve.
Yeah, of course. Well, and that's the thing. I do believe it is one of the great mysteries where we'll never know, ever. I don't care how far science comes. I don't foresee a time while humans are around that we're going to be like, well, we know what UFOs are and represent. Like, I think sometimes I wonder if the mystery is the point. And, and chasing a mystery gets you out of bed. It gets you motivated. It makes you look at the world in a different way. Like, there are results to experiencing this stuff. Sometimes it's negative, very negative. Sometimes it's very positive. It can push people's lives in a new, exciting direction. Kind of like you, Rob. I mean, like, I feel like if 12-year-old Rob didn't see the UFO, I have a hard time believing you'd be doing what you're doing right now. So I don't know if you've ever considered that it had a profound experience on you. There's no doubt about that.
No,
sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
No, Steve, I didn't mean to interrupt. I really like what you're saying, because I've asked myself many times, what put Rob Freeman and Mark McNabb together? Like, we shouldn't be together. No offense, but me meeting Rob Freeman in a Starbucks 15 years ago to talk about one thing, do one other thing. It's always like, for me, it's like pieces of a puzzle. It's like Rob had this experience. If he hadn't met, and I'm absolutely not putting myself in any kind of a prolific light, but if he hadn't met Mark McNabb, who would he have told his story to that would have put him on the path, even with everything he's doing now? And I think he's doing incredible work with Vision Without Eyes and all those things. But if we hadn't connected and we hadn't ended up in Australia and he hadn't met Leone, how would he have integrated these incredible experiences? And the work that he's doing is incredible. And it's the same for me. I'm grateful every day. I'm in Colombia, I'm working, I'm doing all these different films. We're excited about things that we want to do this summer. How would any of that happen? So if it's pieces of a puzzle, what put us in the room with you in Lachlan that had this profound kind of level of experience? Like, of all these pieces didn't come together. And I still think that they have a grand design. They say, again, it's not about being chosen. I'm not saying about that stuff. I don't gravitate. But it's like they find people and they say, it's like a switchboard. And they're looking down and they're saying, well, Rob Freeman had an experience when he was 12 years old. And, let's put him with that filmmaker. That filmmaker is probably going to do something interesting. And let's see where it takes them. I think that's happened probably 1 million times throughout the span of humanity. Where they put people together.
I would say more too. Steve, we kind of call this the cosmic carrot.
Yeah.
Okay. And is all of this like a cosmic carrot to humanity? Humanity as a whole needs to move forward. And it's kind of like that proverbial racehorse where they, tie the carrot to a stick in front of his face and he just keeps going forward. How do we know at least part of this isn't like a cosmic carrot to keep us as a species moving forward?
I don't know.
Exactly. Well, and Valet would always be quick to point out where even just talking about like what people experience in terms of the UFO phenomenon, it's always like a little ahead of us technologically, not too crazy, but and it's always changing. In the 1800s, people saw flying airships that were like, submarines or dirigibles. Then in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, you get the flying saucer that goes all the way through the 70s. Then you get the triangles. Now people don't see those as much. Now we see Tic Tacs, although I think the Tic Tacs are military. But now it seems like the light phenomenon is the thing that's reported the most. So it is changing all the time, right? And what will it show up as next? Y'all might be the ones to document it and discover it. Rob and Mark, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for for coming on, first off, and thank you so much for your time. But these stories are fantastic, and I really just I really like what you're doing. I feel like we all talk about doing this stuff, but y'all are just doing it. So keep up the good work, and I'll be excited to hear what you guys are going to uncover next because it's exciting stuff. It really is. So I'm thrilled that y'all are doing it, and also how fun! What a fun life! Yeah. If nothing came out of it, I mean, my God, you got to go to different countries and play adventure. It's like you're perpetual kids. So y'all are figuring something out, right, man? Because that sounds pretty good to me.
And Steve, it's like on your deathbed, you don't want to say, "Gosh, I should have gone to the office a little more."
No, no one ever says, "I wish I would have worked more."
Exactly.
All right.
Well, folks, for sure.
I boy, as much as you possibly can, fellas. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find more of your work and just anything you want to plug? Please, feel free.
That would be great. I mean, we're on all forms of social media. Probably the greatest resource ever is Rob Freeman, UFO World Explorer on YouTube. It's the same with Facebook, UFO World Explorer, and Instagram. Vision Without Eyes is on Facebook and TikTok and all the different social media as well. The biggest plug would probably be the fact that we're having the epic mega event, of UFOs and Vision Without Eyes. It's all coming together. So if people can reach out, Rob, can reach out to you if they want to get on the waiting list. For anything that we're doing, and that would be great.
Yeah, well, I will have all those links in the show notes, folks, where you can find that and reach out to these guys with questions. I have a feeling they'd probably be willing to answer you. So, Rob Freeman, Mark McNabb, Rob Freeman. thanks so much for your time. This has been a lot of fun. These stories are fantastic and incredible, and I'm frankly jealous of what you're doing because it sounds pretty awesome. But thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And folks, thank you so much for listening to another episode of High Strangeness. Enjoy your dinners tonight. Peace.